this is an opportunity for both residents and owners to understand a little bit better how the process works, what their rights and responsibilities are, and what they need to know if they end up having to go to court either to file an eviction if someone won't pay their rent, or if you're being evicted because of some circumstance or lease violation, what your rights are and how you can proceed.
A lot of this is an educational process. Informing people of what their rights are is always a good thing. And I think that ultimately helps us as well as a court, because it minimizes, hopefully, the amount of cases we'll have to see, because people will understand what their rights are and handle it by communicating with one another rather than having to go through the judicial process.
You know, I've been a landlord for probably about 35 years, and I've seen a lot over the many years of doing it, but you always can learn more. In the stories and listening to Judge Stevens, I call him Joe, it's always good to hear what's new that I can use that might be something I need to know as being a landlord myself.
That I see quite often is issues concerning non-payment of rent. Tenants not paying their rent, large in part because the landlord didn't acquiesce with a request that I had of the landlord. My roof leaked, or my sink didn't work, or my AC was broken, and I wasn't getting a response, so I decided I'm going to withhold my rent. Non-payment of rent for issues of repair and remedy are a no-no on behalf of the tenant. Once you don't pay your rent or you neglect to pay, there are no other recourses. You have given the landlord grounds to possession of their property.
I want to tell the tenants to try to pay on time. If for some reason you can't pay on time, you lost your job, some reason, but you'll have money, communicate with the landlord before the due date and say, look, I'm having trouble paying my rent. Just communicate. The landlord is under no obligation to work with you, but some landlords work with you, some landlords don't, depending on the circumstances of the landlord.
A landlord-tenant relationship typically is bound by a contract. As long as both parties are clear on what the contract says and there isn't a lot of ambiguity, should have a good relationship. So let's make sure we do the good work up front in terms of having an ironclad contract, so that we know if you ever unfortunately end up in court, it's real easy to decide who's right and who's wrong.
The system is designed so that either party cannot dupe the other party, okay? Full transparency. Put your finger on a provision of the lease or a provision of the rules, put your finger on something that the tenants agreed to do that they haven't done. Okay, that's the easiest way to think about non-monetary defaults.
TA has a lot of also resources where when you're going through these leases, where you can call and kind of ask what you can and can't do.
You don't want to go into court as a landlord looking like you're trying to hide something from the tenant. As a tenant, you don't want to go into court looking like you tried to hide something from the landlord.
This court is very empathetic, so we allow both sides to speak.
Even the fact that he states, this isn't going to be like your other courts. Here we're going to take everything into consideration. We're going to listen to the resident. We're going to listen to the tenant. That's what I want. And I believe that's what we want. We just want, whatever's fair, let it be fair.
These are great events, and I applaud Judge Stevens for wanting to do this. I think it's vital that people, landlords and tenants, have an opportunity to talk to their judge outside of the formal court proceeding when they're under the gun on a particular case. I think it's great to get comfortable with the judge, to know the judge nuances because different judges have different ways of doing things.
So that's why we put these kind of seminars on, to educate people on what their rights are, so that when they find themselves in this situation, they'll know what the law says and act accordingly.